I'm Geoff from GC2 Photo Club, and in this video I'm going to talk about ISO and what it means to a photographer. ISO, or ISO, is an abbreviation of International Standards Organzation. For photographers, ISO set a method of standardising the light sensitivity of a camera's sensor or film. With traditional film camera, you had a roll of film that had a set film speed for the whole roll of film, such as ISO 100. Also sometimes measured in ASA, that stands for American Standards Association. ISO 100 and ASA 100 are the same. There are also other standards organisations. ISO is a way of knowing what exposure you will get for your image when you set the aperture and shutter speed combination on your camera. With a digital camera, ISO measures the light sensitivity of your camera's sensor. If you set ISO 100 on your digital camera, you'll get the same exposure as you would with a camera film that is also ISO 100 if you have the same shutter speed aperture combination. One advantage of a digital camera is that you can change the ISO or film speed for each individual shot. This gives you much more flexibility, especially in changing light situations. Here is how to change the ISO settings on a typical Canon camera. There's an ISO button here that you press, and then you move this wheel to change it from 100 to 200 to 400, 800, 1600 and so on and so forth. And here is how to change the ISO settings on a typical Nikon camera. If you see here, you have an ISO button that you press and hold down, and you scroll this wheel here to the right to go from 200 to 250 to 320 to 400 and so on and so forth. So why do we have different film speeds or ISOs, and what do the numbers represent? The numbers indicate how sensitive to light your film or camera sensor is. The lower the ISO number setting, the less sensitive to light the sensor or film is. For instance, ISO 100 is much less sensitive to light than ISO 400. In photography terms, that means that in a low light situation, ISO 100 may give you a very underexposed image, such as this one on the screen. But if you change your ISO setting to ISO 400, you may get a correct exposure, such as this one. To understand the different ISO numbers and how they relate to each other, just remember that ISO 200 is twice as sensitive to light as ISO 100, and that ISO 400 is twice as sensitive to light as ISO 200, and so on and so forth. When setting an exposure manually on your camera, for instance f8 at 125th of a second with an ISO of 400, if you then open your aperture one stop from f8 to 5.6, you will need to halve the ISO number to ISO 200 instead of ISO 400 to get the same exposure. To understand more about exposure, apertures and shutter speeds, see our free video tutorials on our website. Although we can change the ISO for every shot, there are drawbacks for using high ISOs, such as ISO 3200. As you increase the ISO's numbers, you get more digital noise in your image. For a high ISO such as 3200, it can be very significant, such as in this photograph here. I will zoom in on this image so that you can see the digital noise more clearly. Digital noise appears as small coloured or grey circles in your image, as in this one on the screen here. They are particularly visible in shadow areas. However, you can reduce this effect in Camera Raw in Photoshop or in Lightroom. You do this by using the sliders in the detail panel on the right here. In the noise reduction section, you have two sliders, one for luminance and one for colour. You use the luminance slider to remove the grey circles, and the colour slider to remove the colour circles. As you can see, the noise has been significantly reduced here. However, it can soften your image, and you may need to add back in some sharpening. However, that is the subject of another video. I will zoom back out so that you can see the effect on the overall image. On high ISO film, you don't get digital noise, but you have a similar effect which is called grain, as in this photograph here. Once again, I will zoom in so that you can see the effect more clearly. Unfortunately, you can't reduce this effect in the detail panel using the noise reduction sliders. Hope you found that tutorial useful. Please go to our website GC2photoclub.com for more videos and information. I'm Geoff Cable from GC2 Photo Club. Hope to see you again soon.